Okay, so you've heard about projection shaders, which you just did. Well, there's also something called projection textures. What's the difference? Well, let's turn this one off just for the time being. And let's go here to Add Layer, Processing, actually Special, and we're on a projection texture. We're just going to select the same image, and we'll let that add in. The difference here, if you take a look, is that the shader is literally that. It's just a shader, just the way we add any other kind of shaders, right? The texture, however, gives us a little bit more control. And if you look over here, we can add diffuse color, we can add bump maps, and other different ways this texture is applied. So what does that mean? Well, that means we can then go ahead and use the same projection shader, but also have a texture on there that is set, let's say, to a bump map. All right, now this probably isn't the greatest image for a bump. Let's say you had a brick wall or you had a castle you were building from a real photograph. Well, you do a projection shader, you set it up like we just did in the previous video. You do the camera matching like we talked about, but then you add a projection texture on top of it, which allows you to take that texture image and place it as a bump map. All right, so if I come down here to my base shader, let's just bring this up to 1 meter. It might be a little overkill, but now you can see that it's a little bit more here. Again, this is not the best image for it, but adding a little bit more bump into that image. So that's what the projection texture will do. Very, very similar to the shader, but added in conjunction with it and allow you to add a bump map. I've not yet tried it as a displacement, which could be very interesting. But depending on the type of image you're mapping and using a animated camera is where you really can see the effects. So like when you get in close and depending on how it's lit and how you're turning the camera and so on, you can really see some differences in there and give it a little bit extra realism, which is very cool. So once you get to the point where you've gone ahead and done your own and photographed outside, like I said, walls and textures and concrete and things like that would really show bump maps. Frankly, even down in here, I think, in the ground would actually work really well. All right, so try that out. Let's move on to one more thing, and that is our painting projection. I'm going to use a different image for that rather than this one. It's set up very similarly. I'm going to have it primarily set up for you, and then we can go ahead and then paint the texture on, and you'll see how that works.